My name is Tim Murphy. I work for Alto-Shaam. Obviously, we're in the Alto-Shaam booth. I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so with you talking to you about the new Vector line of ovens brought to you by Alto-Shaam. The Vector oven is a complete step change in cooking technology. It's just something that's never been on the market before. The easiest way to go through this is to just start cooking. So I'm going to start cooking. Here we go. All four of these chambers are at different temperatures. The top chamber is at 500, the next chamber is at 400, and the bottom chamber, 400, 375, and then 325. So all at the same time. We're going to cook salmon fillets at 500, fresh made pizza at 400, the sausage at 375, let's turn the lights on here, and the cookies at 325. The ovens are also completely programmable. So when I go in to start a cook, I simply look for grilled salmon and I push grilled salmon and it starts. Next one I hit flatbread pizza and it starts. Then my sausage patties. If I could stop that for hearing it. And then the large cookies. And so we're cooking. So the oven obviously doesn't come programmed with these items. I programmed it. The chef or the manager of the facility would program it to what your gold standard is. As the food starts to come out, you might think it's a little bit dark or a little bit light. I like the cookies to be a little gooey on the inside. Maybe you want them cooked more complete all the way through. Just because the way it comes out doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way. We would come to your establishment. When you purchase an oven, we would send somebody from our rep chain or somebody from Alto-Shaam to your facility, and we would help you learn how to program. Programming is very intuitive. It is not difficult. Everybody here, I assume, is carrying a smartphone and at some point has downloaded an app. So if you've done all of that, there's a smartphone right there. If you've done all of that, then you're already overqualified to program on the Vector line of ovens. So one of the things, of course, obviously, is the programmability. So if you're the chef and you want to take a day off every now and then, you can't work 7 days a week. Somebody else has to work in your stead. Well, Johnny thinks that you cook the biscuits too dark, so he's going to cook them lighter when you're not there. Well, now with the programmable Vector line, you don't have to worry about that as much. It's nothing to say you can't take it out of the oven early, right? There's always a way to cheat the system, I suppose. But at least you have that ability for consistent cooking time in and time out. Again, the programmability, when we talk about that, people get a little nervous. Trust me when I tell you, you have no reason to trust me, right? You don't know me. Trust me when I tell you it is very intuitive, it's very simple. And again, we will be there to help you with it. So one of the first items we talk about right off the bat is the programmability of the oven. I said it right at the beginning, but the other nice thing is the flexibility of the oven. We're cooking at 4 different temperatures. We're cooking at 500, 400, 375, 325. And the reason we want to be able to do that is, in convection oven world right now, we cook everything at 350 or 325. We refer to that as the lowest common denominator. You cook everything at that temperature because everything can be cooked at that temperature. When in actuality, a chicken breast or a salmon fillet really wants to be cooked at a very, very high temperature. And you can do that in a convection oven, absolutely, but if you slide the cookies in there a little bit later, they're going to be crispy critters before they're done, so you can't cook a baked product in there. The Vector line of ovens allows you to be able to do that. Why do I say proteins actually want to be cooked at a higher temperature? I spent 25 years in the B&I world until I got into equipment and was allowed to really experiment without the crunch of mealtime. I learned that proteins want to be cooked hot. And they want to be cooked hot, and if you know this, great, but the yield on a chicken breast is actually higher when cooked at 500 degrees versus 350. Now that was a little weird to me. I had to wrap my arms around that. That doesn't make any sense. It's so hot, it's going to dry it out. But by adding that 150 degrees to the cook, it's in the oven for a much shorter period of time, and you're actually using that extreme heat to kind of sear the outside of the chicken breast. So one of the things we're going to do, that I'm going to ask you to do, is taste the chicken when we're done, because I know a lot of you are just not going to believe me because we've cooked chicken breast at 350 degrees our whole life. We also have the ability within each chamber to use different fan speeds. Convection ovens have high and low. This, you have 10 different fan speed settings from 10% to 100%. You can also change that cook. If you notice, my large cookies you wouldn't know to notice this. We can cook in stages, what we call stages. So for the first half of the cook on the cookies, it's going to cook for 6 minutes and 30 seconds at 325 degrees and 40% fan. Halfway through, or with another 630, it's going to cook at 350 degrees and 70% fan. So once again, you can cook food the way it wants to be cooked. We're also cooking the pizza right now with a, excuse me, we're also cooking the pizza right now, which is coming out, with a 2-stage cook. And why would we do that? Pizza wants to cook at a really high temperature, and it wants lots of heat thrown at it. We're going to follow up the pizza with tater tots, and I'll get back to my pizza point here in just a second. I simply scroll down, I move my check to the chamber I want to work in, I hit tots, which I've pre-programmed, and off they go. Pizza wants to be cooked at a high temperature and a high fan, but if I turn that fan on high right off the bat, I'm going to blow cheese off the top of the pizza. So a classic 2-stage cook is to cook that pizza for the first minute or so at a lower fan to turn that cheese into a glue, kind of hold everything together, and then for the rest of the cook I bring the fan up. You'll notice in the menu mix that I put in, we're gonna cook 10 pans of food today in 19 minutes and 15 seconds. And you'll notice those 10 pans of food are all over the place. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I've got breakfast items, I've got frozen items, I've got fresh items, I've got grilled items, I've got all kinds of items. Our demo is to show you what the oven can do, not to give you the perfect meal. So we've mixed some items around. So just kind of an FYI, I don't want you to think I'm like this weird guy who serves salmon with sunny side up eggs. And yes, we're going to cook sunny side up eggs. So a couple of the things that are a little bit interesting, that if you're running with a convection oven, you know that sunny side up eggs are not going to be cooked in your convection oven. You know that a decent pizza is not going to be cooked in your convection oven. We're doing some grilled items right now. The salmon's going to be out in just a couple of minutes. And we're going to be able to show you that we take a cold grill pan with cold product on it, and when I flip that salmon, it'll have grill marks just like it came off the charbroiler. So we're going to do some items here that are what I like to refer to as wow items. I don't know that anybody really uses the word wow on a regular basis, but I do every time I get to cook, so it's fun for me. One of my challenges when I do this demo is as we get going, the food starts going in and out, so I have to kind of stop and start, so forgive me for that, but that's actually a good thing when it comes time for the demo. So we're going to pull, what am I pulling?
You're pulling your third chamber.
I am pulling the sausage patties, and we're going to put in hash browns. These sausage patties were put in frozen. I go to the chamber I want to choose. I go down to hash browns, up to hash browns, hit hash browns, and off to the races we go. So if I flip these over, they look like they came right off of a flat top. So what a lot of people see in the technology is the fact that they can get some relief to some equipment in their facility that may be overtaxed. So for instance, if my flat top was overtaxed, I could move my sausage patties to the oven and take some heat off that flat top. For this product, I'm going to put it in our 500 series Alto-Shaam holder. Fits right under my counter real nice, and we'll bring that back out when we're done the cook. As I go through this, I really encourage anybody to raise their hand, ask questions. I'm all about answering the questions. It makes my job a little bit easier. I will continue to keep moving, but get that hand up. If there are groups in here that are kind of chit-chatting amongst yourself and you're asking each other questions, I promise somebody else has that question, so don't be shy. Throw that question out, I'll repeat it, and then we can answer it. We can all share in your interest. So I've gotten through the flexibility of the oven. I've gotten through the programmability of the oven, but I haven't really talked about the airflow of the oven, and I think that's what Mr. Klosterman is asking me. The real game changer in this technology, as we all know, a convection oven, this is my pan of food, this is my fan, and I hit the side of the fan. The food's actually here, it's not here. It's not a real easy way to transfer heat to the food. That is one of the reasons we cook at a lower temperature as well, so we have more time for that heat to penetrate the food. What we've actually done is we've taken the air in our ovens and we've moved it from a horizontal movement to a vertical movement. So again, in a convection oven, the air is coming this way. We take the air, we blow it into this opening, plenum, shelf, it has a number of different names, and then we turn the air and we have it go vertically. So we're actually moving the air from the top and the bottom and not from the back. It's coming from the back, it's just not. cooking immediately when it exits. I'm good. So we're gonna pull this salmon off. Have a volunteer. Just anybody? Volunteer. You'll be my volunteer. Can you touch the bottom of that pan, please? That cold? Okay, good. We'll come back to that. That's so important. He said it was cold. Did everybody hear they said it was cold? All right. So now we go back here and we pick grilled chicken and off it goes. So I promised you marks on the fish. There are your marks on the fish. Okay. Straight out of the oven. This was also on a cold platter when it went in. So we'll come back to the salmon here. So we're taking the air, it's coming in from the back and we're moving it horizontal, or vertical. So it's coming through this series of holes and slots. And it essentially makes curtains of air. If you can imagine, the air is coming out through these skinny spots and it's opening as it goes to the bottom, as it gets to the food. So it's nice and even. There's no rotating pans. You notice once I push a button to start, I'm not spinning pans, I'm not rotating pans, I'm not doing anything to those pans. So it's the other part of this technology, and there's one more part we haven't got to yet, is the evenness and how we've simplified the cook. So we make it programmable. Not only that, but now you don't have to pay attention to it. So if I was working a convection oven and trying to do this demo, it'd be very, very difficult because I'd be moving the pans around. These plates also come apart so that you can run them through the dish machine and clean them in your pot and pan sink and so forth and so on. So for cleanability, it's great. You know, you can soak them overnight if they really get funky and you haven't gotten down to it. These ridges right here are simply part of the airflow. It moves air as it goes in. So that's all these fins are. So thank you very much for your question. Did I answer it? Okay. Yep. The last item we have to talk about, so we have 4 big things we talk about when we talk about this technology. We talk about the programmability. We talk about the flexibility. Excuse me. We talk about the air, and now with the biggie. The biggie, it's all 3 of the ventless ovens, all 3 of these ovens, I just gave it away. All 3 of these ovens that you see in front of me, the 2-chamber, the 3-chamber, and the 4-chamber Vector are all ventless. They're hoodless. They're UL certified ventless. So I said already I come from the B&I world. Oh good, I got a couple minutes. I said I come from the B&I world. And when I think about this technology, the first thing that goes through my mind is I spent 25 years in the business without it. I wish I had had it. That's the first thing that goes through my mind. Second thing that goes through my mind is campuses. And what do I mean by campuses? I mean Microsoft has a huge campus. I mean a hospital. I mean a university. I mean a manufacturing facility. If you've ever been to a Boeing facility, for instance, these are enormous campuses. And we have lots of little satellites in all these different campuses. Some of them are just cold food, where we ship salads and sandwiches, and we try and get people out of our main cafes and get them closer to their desks. Now all of a sudden, with an install of some electric, we can add an oven and we can add cooking capability. And by adding that cooking capability, we offer a fresher product, closer to the customer. And one thing I'm always big on that I think is way, way undervalued is when you bring equipment to the front of the house, you get those aromas in your facility. When you open that oven, I don't know if there's any studies out there, but I'm a firm believer that when you get those aromas in your facility, when you get your equipment to the front of the house, it just adds so much more to the dining experience. So we've talked about a lot of things here. Do I have any questions yet? Yeah, go ahead. It's a great question. I should have gone over that. The thing I always forget to say, I don't say it enough, and I don't know why, it's just one of those things I can't get in my brain, is this is 4 ovens in one. You have to think about it as 4 ovens in one. So there are 4 blowers, there are 4 heaters. So they are completely independent. When I take out all those shelves to clean them, it looks like one regular convection oven, right? But it's actually 4 ovens in one. So there's a heater for this one, blower for all 4 as well. So that's how you have all the different temperatures. Great, perfect. How do I keep the heat? If you look into the back of this oven, I opened this door at the wrong time. If you look into the back of the oven, you see the braided metal with the holes in it? That is our return air. That's where all the air, so the air is coming from the top and the bottom. The same fan that pushes air through the top and the bottom is also drawing the air to the back, right? Cookies, you can't do a demo without sweets. This is kind of, I'm going to come back to your question, okay? This is kind of a neat thing. This is just a waffle pan. It's really made for residential use. plastic handle, I unscrewed it, threw it away. So this is just a little waffle pan. This is fresh waffle mix. I like to play in it a little bit so everybody knows it's fresh. And in we go. So we're going to actually do waffles in a convection oven from batter. So that air is coming from the top and the bottom. It's being drawn into the back of the oven because the same fan that's pushing air through the jet plates is also pulling it back, right? So it's a circular system. That air that's being drawn back means that it's not moving between the door and the shelves because it's not even really getting there. You want to be my volunteer for a minute? Come here. Would you? How close do you? Where do you stand when you? Do you have a convection oven or know of them? Okay. When you open the door to a convection oven, you never stand right in front of it. Why? Because you get the blast of air. I'm going to ask you to stand in front of it. And you were blinking. You were ready. Your eyes went like this. I saw. Okay. So again, that air system holds that air back. Nachos, please.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm sleeping.
There's our tater tots. This is one of the items we're going to cook that is could be a cook to order item. And I'm behind. So we go here and hit nachos.
7-6.
And you know what? No matter how good we make the technology, I can't get a little arm to stick out and whack me that I forgot to hit the button. So that's what happened there. Here come our hash browns. We're going to take our hash browns. We're going to put them in our 500 series holding cabinet. And I've just messed up, so you have to bear with me for a minute. Item that goes in after hash browns is eggs. And I was answering questions instead of cracking eggs. So the reason I crack the eggs in front of the customers, I don't want anybody to think I'm using those funky egg patties that you can buy frozen that supposedly are fried eggs just frozen. And I really am bad cracking it. All I've done is spray this pan with a little bit of oil, a little bit of release. These are just regular grade A large eggs. This pan is a Wilton pan. They actually sell them at hobby stores, grocery stores. You can buy them on Amazon. I did good that time.
Yeah, you did.
No broken yolks. No broken yolks. First time. Thank you.
Talk about frying eggs.
Sunny side up eggs. Where was I? I was answering a question. The air. Why doesn't the heat go between them? So we get that circular air, and my friend came up with like this when she opened the oven. So that air is being drawn back in. Now, to go further on that question, you really shouldn't operate the oven with more than 100 degrees between chambers. And you should also keep your high temperatures on the bottom and your lower on the other way. High temperatures on the top, your lower on the bottom. Because heat will penetrate through the stainless steel, right? But we leave the fans always running. Even when the oven's in idle, it's at least running at 30% to keep those temperatures the way they are. So did that answer the temperature question? Cool. Sunny side up eggs. This is a cool one, guys. If you're a small facility, again, you're going to add this oven to a kiosk location. All of a sudden, you can do fresh breakfast sandwiches. The cooked setting I'm going to show you when it comes out is 3 minutes and 45 seconds. It's a sunny side up egg. If I didn't want a sunny side up egg, all I got to do is break that yolk before I put it in. Same exact setting. I have a hard egg when it comes out. Our nachos were just 2.5 minutes. You may have to forgive me, I may have put too much cheese on here.
No such thing.
Okay, what? Or not enough. Normally someone yells out, no such thing as too much cheese. So the challenge, part of the challenge to my little job that I do here is that I start to run out of space, so I'll actually start overlapping pans a little bit. So that 345 on the egg is really kind of a cool thing. These are the things I really like pulling out of the oven because everybody's like, you didn't do that. So the next thing we have coming out is the grilled chicken. Where's my volunteer tested the pan? That was you? Okay. You got one more job. Now, sir, if you would be so kind, and if you would please confirm that the bottom of this pan is 500 degrees? You're not going to touch it. Another volunteer? Yes. So this is really big for me. Coming out of operations, if I did grilled chicken, if I did a grilled chicken catering function, I would take my chicken, I'd put it on the charbroiler, I'd put the marks on the charbroiler, then I'd take my chicken and I'd put it back on a pan, put it back in the walk-in. Once I got it all charbroiled, all marked, then I took it back out of the walk-in, I went to the oven and I heated it up. So now we can do a catering function all in one shot. You can be cooking it while you're doing other things. You're not rotating it, you're not having to cook it on the flat top.
Cold pan versus...
Bob is my helper, so a little clap for Bob. Thank you, Bob.
I'm the fan.
The reason I asked this gentleman to touch the pan before I put it in is because you'll go to a lot of demos where they're using these grill pans and they'll get the same marks I just got and they do a very nice job of it, but what's their trick? They're preheating the pan. This is why I asked this fine gentleman, thank you very much for your help, I asked this fine gentleman to please touch the pan before it went in so at least somebody could verify for me that it was cold before it went in. So it's kind of a nice addition to that, and the fact that you could tray all these up and run them through. Yes, sir?
Talk about flavor transfer.
I get a lot of questions about flavor transfer, hence why I cook salmon. In some of my demos, I won't talk about it other than to say, you eat, you tell me where the flavor transfer is. I can tell you all day that there's no flavor transfer, but I don't know if you're going to believe me. So for those of you who are in doubt, I suggest that you try something that was cooking while the salmon was cooking, but I'll bet a pretty penny that you're not going to have any flavor transfer. Again, that's a result of a couple of things. That's the recirculated air that we already talked about, but that's also the catalyst. The catalyst is a metal alloy that the air goes across that takes the grease out of the air. Because it takes the grease out of the air, it also takes the flavor out of the air. So it helps eliminate some of that potential cross-contamination as well. We got 49 seconds left. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
One thing I love here you talk about is the redundancy.
Talked about redundancy. Who's got a convection oven in their facility? Anybody? Okay. What happens when the motor goes out? You're done. The motor goes out here, you've still got 3/4 of your oven. So I can sit here and tell you all day that the motors won't go out, but it's a moving part. Moving parts do break. And we are a fine supplier of parts if you need them. Put that out there. But with this oven, this really hit home with me. I was at a very small show in New York, and I had a guy from a service company come up to me. And he's like, wait a minute, you've got 4 motors in there? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Now if I have somebody call for a Vector repair, and at the same time I get a guy with a convection oven repair, I can tell the Vector guy to wait. And I said, that's not the kind of customer service we're looking for, pal. 19 minutes and 15 seconds. You've all been very attentive. I appreciate your questions. This is a lot of food to come out in that amount of time, right? Hold on a minute. I pitched another item here. That's 19 minutes and 15 seconds. So we all have a little what do they call it?
Crescendo.
A crescendo. So here's my crescendo. You ready? Where's Mr. Stringless? See if he wants to.
Oh, you didn't talk about it.
I didn't talk about the door opening. I just got asked about how to compensate for the door to be open. And I always do this in a demo, so thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll shake your hand. We did a lot of testing. And what we found is if the door is open for 20 seconds or less, it doesn't affect any of the cook. Okay? 20 seconds being kind of that magic number that was not just grabbed out of the air, it was played with. After 20 seconds, we found a negative relationship with the cook, mainly being underdone. So after 20 seconds, the computer adds a half a second for every second the door is open. So in a 30-second cook, this is always the example I use, in a 30-second cook, it ignores the first 20 seconds. The next 10 seconds is half a second per second. It adds 5 seconds to the cook. And to take it one step further, we add that to immediately when you close the door, not at the end. Because if you're talking about an 8-minute cook and it adds 5 seconds, now that cook is going to end at 8:05. And as much as I like to talk to my customers, I know that it's going to create a lot of phone calls because their oven's not technically broken, but they're going to say, my oven's cooking too long, something's wrong. So we actually add it right when the door closes. Nobody's going to notice it now. So now I got to do my crescendo. Have you ever seen this much food cooked at different temperatures, at different blower speeds, to this quality in 21 linear inches in 19 minutes and 15 seconds? Pretty cool stuff, isn't it? If you'll give me a couple minutes, I'm going to start plattering some of this up. The one thing I haven't done yet, because it got a little bit buried, was flip these little waffles. Some of you may be wondering if I'm being truthful about my little waffles. As a little side note, we're not real sure why, nobody's been able to explain it to me, but we actually get a better rise on pastry type items. This waffle batter, there's barely 1.5 ounces in each of those, so it's not very much batter. We get better. We have one of our test locations was a woman who actually won Cake Wars and what kept Cake Wars on the Food Channel. She's using less batter in her cupcakes. She has a commercial business, and she's using less batter in her cupcakes and her cakes. Again, I don't necessarily know why. So we think it's the air hitting directly at the bottom of the pan. So it gives it a little more oomph. Oomph is a correct cooking word. Are there any more questions, please? I like the questions. So again, with the 4 biggies: flexibility, cooking food the way it wants to be cooked, being able to cook at different temperatures in the same oven. The hoodless is a biggie. The programmability, which we went over, and I promise you can do it. The even airflow, so you don't have to turn and rotate pans. Isn't that cool? I've got toothpicks up here, folks, so if you want to come up and get a tater tot, or I can use my tongs to get you some of the... I purposely cut the chicken at the end because I want it to bleed out just a little bit so that it gets to its driest point, which I know you will not consider an issue once you get a hold of some. Cookies can only be taken in whole cookies. We don't do half portions of dessert at Alto-Shaam. We consider that to be a little bit sacrilege.